Welcome to Protecting Our Freedoms, Freedom Briefs. I'm your host, Joy Vacherbeck. This is brought to you by the American Security Council Foundation. These Freedom Briefs are meant to give you a little glimpse into national security and economic security matters. And today we are going to talk about Senior Fellow Alan Dowd's article on Japan unveils new security strategy. This is part one in his two-part series. Welcome back again, Alan.
Good to be here, as always, Joy. Look forward to talking with you.
Thank you. And Alan, on this article, and it's again very relevant as always, it speaks to Japan's situation, and they are in quite the situation with the PRC and North Korea and Russia there, as we discussed. And you speak to, I'll quote, the most severe and complex security environment since the end of World War II. And could you brief us on why Japan is facing such a complex security environment?
Yes, I can, and all our listeners need to do, and I know our listeners are widely read and well read. But look at a map, and then glance at your news feed, and you'll see Japan has the misfortune of being in very close geographic proximity to three of the most aggressive tyrannies on earth. The PRC, North Korea, and Russia. Let me talk a little bit about each of them. We'll start with the PRC. Xi Jinping has basically for the entirety of his rule, I think it's 2012, 2013, 2014, he comes into power, has continually threatened Japan and more broadly undermined the regional order and the international order. Mm-hmm. Here's some examples, and this is what Japan's dealing with on a daily basis. Xi Jinping erased Hong Kong's independence in violation of international treaties. Xi Jinping, China has attacked democratic India without cause in the Himalayan border region. Xi Jinping has threatened attacks against democratic Taiwan, constantly violates Taiwan's air defense identification zone and sea space. Xi Jinping's China conducts a relentless, what I call a cyber siege of Japan and the rest of the free world. Japan and the United States are targets 1 and 1A, and some form or the other of the Chinese cyber assault. China has unleashed through incompetence a crippling global pandemic that really opened the eyes of some, both in the United States and Japan, who thought there might be a way to form a partnership with Xi Jinping's China. Xi is expanding his nuclear arsenal and nuclear strike capabilities, is engaging in a massive military modernization effort. Here are the numbers on that, Joy. Not under just Xi, but since 2001, China's military expenditure has exploded 517%. And that has enabled Xi to field and basically recreate China's military force into a real 21st century military. It's now the largest navy on earth is China's. This has given Xi muscle, and he's flexing that muscle by illegally claiming a vast part of the South China Sea, constructing and militarizing islands in violation of international law in the South China Sea, and loitering PRC vessels in Japanese waters, and then also flying PRC warplanes into and near, at least, Japanese airspace. Since here's a piece of data that from a RAND study, since mid-2014, Chinese government vessels have penetrated the territorial seas of Japan 7 to 9 times per month.
Wow.
And then in the air, China's incursions are in the dozens, per month. China accounts for about 61% of the airspace incursions and violations of Japanese air defense identification zone. Russia accounts for the West.
And thanks for bringing that up, Alan, because a lot of times we hear about China incursions in Taiwan, but not as much as Japan.
No.
I really didn't realize that was the case, how heavily they are
Yeah, and all of it is probing. They're pushing, and you're correct, Joy. We don't hear as much about what China is doing to the north in and around Japan and South Korea. But Russia accounts about 30% of the airspace, or 36% of the airspace incursions around China. In fact, just a few weeks ago, Russian and Chinese bombers in a joint exercise flew over the Sea of Japan, and they skirted Japanese and South Korean airspace. In fact, they may have gone into both the airspace a couple times. And then, of course, that brings us to the threat posed by Russia to Japan. Japan is looking at Russia, and they see Russia's launched wars of aggression against Ukraine and Georgia, committing war crimes in Syria and Ukraine, propping up regimes that gas their own people, Syria, and starve their own people, Venezuela. Putin armed Taliban forces who were waging a guerrilla war against UN-authorized peacekeepers. Putin's attacked America's energy infrastructure. He threatened Norway, Poland, Finland, and Sweden with military attacks. He's repeatedly threatened Japanese territories. And again, his warplanes and warships routinely violate or threaten Japanese airspace and territorial waters. That's the second piece of what Japan's facing. The third is North Korea, which is the most reckless and the most unpredictable of the three. It's conducting missile tests now in a very high tempo. Sometimes these missile tests violate Japanese airspace. Many of them threaten Japanese airspace. In 2022 alone, Joy, the North Korean test fired at least 90 missiles, including 23 on a single day. Some of those tests triggered air raid warnings inside some of Japan's major cities, including Tokyo. So this is a threat environment that Japan is facing.
And you're certainly, I agree, North Korea is just very unpredictable and certainly a danger to them. But Russia just surprised, I won't say surprises me, but you would think they have their hands full enough with Ukraine, but they've got to meddle in the international democratic order as it is.
Right.
And with that being said, my other question too, in your article you discuss, and very much we talk about it around here, America's waning influence in the world, unfortunately. Certainly the Afghanistan debacle didn't help much, but if you could brief us a little, that has put Japan in this situation where they do need to build up their military, is that correct?
That's right. And allied governments, partners in the free world, look at the same news articles, the same world events that we see, and they make determinations and assessments based on those things. And the news has not been good for the leader of the free world. The message, the signals have not been good by and large for quite a while. You mentioned the Afghanistan pullout. That's a big signal that friend and foe alike took a lesson from. The Russians, there's no doubt in my mind, Putin saw what the United States did there and moved against Ukraine.
Absolutely.
Because of the way the U.S. pulled out and the disarray in NATO. We did that really without any allied consultation. It was truly, like you said, a debacle. But it predated that. The deal was made by the Trump administration. That's a bipartisan failure, I would submit. And then there was pullouts and pullbacks by the Obama administration in places like Iraq, and in decisions the Obama administration made with things like missile defense in Eastern Europe with our allies in NATO. Those signals were being seen and understood by allies and foes, and certainly Japan's one of them. So everything from these pullbacks, like Afghanistan being the greatest example, the most obvious one, but also things like, and we've talked about this, Joy, sequestration, which really slashed the defense budget, and now we have we have high inflation, which is basically flatlining any kind of increase that Congress can give to the Defense Department. It's kind of cut off at the knees by inflation. The same, this is what I don't think Americans always don't think about sometimes, the same issues that you and I face and our families when we go to the grocery, which is a gallon of milk costs 20% more than it did last year. And we go to the gas station and gas cut. The Pentagon faces the same pressures. Bullets cost more, systems, weapon systems, flak jackets, everything costs more for the Pentagon too. So we may see big numbers like $857 billion defense budget, but it's being eaten away by inflation. So these kinds of things, American policy pullbacks, sequestration, which was, I think, very destructive and short-sighted, and inflation are leading to, and of course, the erratic actions by a couple administrations in a row,
right,
lead, especially our allies in places that are on the front lines of freedom, like Japan, that don't have a buffer zone around them like we do. They're leading them to say, we've got to start to do more on our own. And that's not all bad.
I was going to say that too. It's not, I guess, not all bad, but
right. Yeah, it's not a bad thing to a degree, but we don't want to get to a point. It can become a worrisome development if allies go their own way or distrust us or think that the U.S. treaty guarantees are not worth the paper they're printed on. That could become truly destabilizing, worrisome, and we could be off to the races for more disorder than we're looking at even right now. But so some of it's good, and Japan's doing its part. It's doubling its defense budget. It is getting much more serious about deterrence. It's acquiring the kinds of weapons that really get China's attention and Russia's attention and North Korea's, and it's offering to work with us in ways that we need them to do as well, which is important for the American people to see that allies are carrying their share. But we don't want them to go their own way and think that our treaty guarantee isn't worth anything.
Right, and that we're not going to be there for them.
Right.
Yes, I agree. Absolutely, Alan. Thank you for that brief on this. And I believe we could have a whole podcast on this entire thing. And to our listeners, Alan will be coming out with part 2 on his Japan article. So look for that on our website, www.ascf.us. Subscribe to our channels on Rumble and YouTube, and follow us on Facebook. And Alan, I love all your articles, and I look forward to podcasting with you soon.
Always enjoy talking with you, Joy, and we look forward to the next one.
Sounds good. Well, thank you to our listeners for joining us for these Freedom Briefs, and we hope to have you back soon as we do another Protecting Our Freedom podcast. Thank you, everyone.
If you would like to support the American Security Council Foundation, please visit www.ascf.us. Thanks so much, and have a great day.